go ahead,
correctly.
Surge.
Search.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a pleasure having you both here. In the interest of time, of course, we're going to get things started. But we want to say it's really a pleasure to have you take time out of your busy schedules to hear us provide information, timely information, as a matter of fact, on how you can leverage globalization and how you can use or see your passport as a means, absolutely no problem, Serge, as a means to uh, kickstarting that wealth creation journey if you have not yet done so. So I want to let you guys know that the world is changing. Things are really dynamic in the immigration space. As an immigration lawyer, I have heard no less than five announcements coming out of the Canadian federal government uh, pertaining to updates impacting international students, impacting temporary foreign workers, and most recently, impacting the amount of Canadian permanent residents that they will be admitting for 2025 to 2027. This target reduction is the first in several years of Canada's very robust immigration mandate. And it is sending a signal that things are changing up in the landscape. So, what do you do when changes are amidst? You've got to pivot and you've got to recognize that there are opportunities elsewhere. There are opportunities globally, as a matter of fact. And there is absolutely nothing that's preventing you from leveraging those opportunities. So today, we want to highlight what we call a borderless world and share with you how you can leverage your passport to create wealth. So, what are some reasons why people consider making investments beyond their borders? Several reasons. And for this presentation, we're going to be focusing on investing in the US. There are other Caribbean countries that we recommend to our clients, to explore for several reasons. But for today, we're going to be talking about why Canadians can consider investing in the US. First and foremost, we're looking at the diverse investment opportunities that await you in the US. There are several sectors there, from technology, healthcare, finance, biotechnology, you name it, renewable energy. And that diverse array of investment opportunities increase the attractiveness of the United States as a territory for persons to explore investment opportunities. Other reasons include having access to very global brands. Apple, Amazon, Google, those are based inside the US. If you want to think about starting a mom and pop or blue collar business, statistics show that Florida, and as a matter of fact, other southern states have some of the most uh, rapidly growing markets for those businesses. So what we mean by those mom and pop businesses, anything that's blue collar, your electrician businesses, your plumbing businesses, housekeeping or cleaning businesses, things that AI can never take away. Those are what we're talking about. As a matter of fact, a recent report showed that you have cleaners right now in the United States, in Florida, earning 150,000 US dollars per year, and that's their take-home salary. So just think about the opportunities that are available within that market. Tax considerations, and since I'm a lawyer, I'm going to allow Manu to talk more about those. Economic stability, networking and business expansion. And with that note, I want to let you know that in looking at these investment opportunities, you have got to have the right team on your side. So, who is the team that I speak about today? My name is Yanique Russell. I'm an immigration lawyer, and I am very enthused about global investment opportunities. And I help my clients to leverage estate planning and immigration law to invest in opportunities that are available worldwide. We also have with us this afternoon Manu Shandal, who is a CPA not only in Canada, but also in the US. And we also have real estate investor and retired mortgage broker Raymond McMillan, who is a real estate guru. That is your team for this afternoon, and that is why we are equipped with the requisite knowledge to share a little bit more about why you should be exploring these opportunities in the US. So let me tell you, there are compelling reasons as to why Canadians should be investing in the US. Think about the opportunity to head south during the cold months and just soak up the sunshine, sit on the beach, relax a little bit. If you were to leverage real estate investment opportunities and think about purchasing a condominium or a home that can be otherwise rented out or be placed on Verbo or Airbnb that allows you to reap some return on your investment for the months that you're not in the US, that would be a wonderful opportunity. You may be thinking, but I'm a Canadian, like I have a Canadian citizenship passport. How would I be able to remain in the US for an extended period? It is possible. And we are able to assist you with pursuing the necessary permits that can give you the requisite residency to legally remain in the US as an investor and not just run your business, but also enjoy all the beautiful amenities that come with being down south. So again, the market conditions are right. The investment fees are right. The tax policies are right. So it is going to be critical for you to have a team that specializes in cross-border investments who can provide you with the guidance you need to make informed decisions that align with your financial goals. Let me tell you this. If you have an accountant, a lawyer, and a real estate investor at the steering wheel, guiding you using your passport to wealth, then really there's nothing stopping you from leveraging this wonderful opportunity. When we talk about the how, like how do you remain in the US as an investor without having to consider that you are contravening any of the laws? I'm going to share a little bit with you about the E2 visa. Now, the E2 investor or treaty investor visa, it's a non-immigrant visa, but it allows Canadians to travel to the US to expand your business or to pursue investments, right? Although it doesn't lead to permanent immigration status, it will allow you to extend your temporary stay in the country, and you can do that essentially perpetually. So essentially, you're living there. There is a process required and associated with pursuing this E2 visa. But before you look into the process, I want to let you know that the reasons behind doing this is really at the root of wealth creation. Why should you want to create wealth? Well, besides the point of financial freedom, I'm sure you have your personal goals. You have documented what success looks like for you. Success may look like freedom for you. Success may look like just being available to take your children to school whenever you want to, or to sit with them and help them complete an assignment whenever you want to. Are you able to attain that success as you currently are in the country you currently are located? If you are, then by all means, that's a wonderful place to be. But in the event that you are not, I implore you and invite you to have a look at investment opportunities that are available in the US. Now, it doesn't take long to get an E2 visa. Like you can, as a Canadian, get your E2 visa within 45 days. And that is something that our office helps you with. There are a few eligibility requirements, and I'm going to touch on these as I wrap up and invite Manu to touch on the tax responsibilities. You've got to be a citizen of one of the 78 countries that US has signed a treaty of commerce with. Canada is already one, so we've done that groundwork for you to let you know that you've checked that box. The business that you invest in must employ American workers, and you have to own at least 50% of the shares in that business. It has to be a for-profit business, and you have got to have a managerial or supervisory role or be in what they deem as an operational position where you are overseeing the operation of the company, right? You have got to make this investment to generate a profit within the next 5 years. And you have to make a genuine commitment to develop and manage that business successfully. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how much will this take? The law says you have to make a significant contribution to the business, and that is intentional. So significant can be anywhere from 100,000 US dollars and upwards. If you are interested in learning more about how you can apply for the E2 visa, be sure to reach out to us and we will tell you everything about the eligibility requirements, the documents you need, and how you can embark on this journey to becoming a US investor. I'm now going to turn over to Manu, who is going to tell you how the tax laws, will impact you as a Canadian resident. Over to you, Manu.
Great. Thank you, Yanique. That was fantastic. Big shoes to fill now. I feel I've got to follow up on this. So very quickly, a little bit about myself. I've got my CPA from Canada and the US. For about 20 years, I was in the corporate world, working primarily for US head offices, and then supporting the Canadian division as the head of finance, which gave me exposure to Canada and US accounting and taxes. And that's where the knowledge comes from. Then about 2 years ago, I started my own practice, went independent, and I thought, why not help people at the grassroots level who weren't able to get this type of knowledge? So here I am. So very quickly, the three topics I want to delve on is number one, the residency rule. Number two, it's in the event that you pass away in the US, how does the estate taxes work? And then number three, very important, is your departure tax. A lot of us tend to forget about departure tax, and then we get hit with the big bill. And also, in addition to what Yanique was saying, and Yanique, please correct me if I'm wrong, if you currently don't live in Canada and you're not part of those 78 countries and you want to move to the US, it's easier to come into Canada if you hit certain criterias. And then once you become a resident of Canada, it then becomes easier to move into the US. So it's a bit of a scenic route, but it definitely gets you to your final destination. So having said that, let's get started. Now, Canada and US, for those of you who may or may not be aware, even though we're very close to each other and our demographics are fairly similar, we're very different and very similar in certain regards. For example, our difference is hockey is we live and breathe hockey, whereas in the US, football reigns supreme. And my friend Ray from Florida can tell you all about that. Then some of our differences are they've got sandy, dry deserts. We have the white tundra. Then they have Hollywood, and we have safe streets. So I guess we have our similarities and differences. And let's not forget the tropical beaches and the Canadian beer. So we have some wonderful differences here. Sorry, it's got a visitor coming in. So let's touch on the residency rule. Now, how that works is the general rule of thumb that social media likes to put out there is if you spend 183 days or more outside of Canada, which is called the sojourner rule, you're now a non-resident of Canada. But that is not always the case. You can spend more than 183 days, which is 6 months, and still be deemed a resident of Canada. And there's many factors that go into this. For instance, where is your primary residence? Where does your spouse live? In which country is your local bank or your investments? In which country do you have a driver's license? In which country are you a citizen? So when this happens, and also what happens for some entrepreneurs is they might have businesses in multiple countries. So if you're spending time, let's say, in 4 different countries, and all 4 of them were less than 183 days, now what do you do? So what we call in our accounting term, it's called a balance sheet. And it's not a true financial balance sheet, but what it is we gather all the facts, the questions I've asked you, plus many more, and then based on this balance sheet that we create for each country that you were living in, we then give you a litmus test to decide, depending on your situation, where would you be a resident? We then draft a letter, submit it to the government, and say, based on these facts, we're filing your tax return in such a way based on these scenarios. And sometimes the CRA will come back and challenge. And the reason why they challenge is, let's be honest, all countries want to collect the maximum amount of taxes, and that's just normal. But again, if the work has been done up front and the facts are accurate, more often than not, the ruling is always in your favor, and that's just statistics. But again, the CRA will always do its audit. And then we come into estate planning. So you've packed your bags, you're living in the US, warmer climate, lower taxes, all the good stuff that we hear about, bigger economy, and you're on your way. But now, unfortunately, someone, your partner or yourself, someone comes to their demise. Now, in this instance, what happens is the rule is that if you're a resident of the US, so if you're a Canadian living in the US and you die in the US, you will be subject to US estate taxes on certain US assets. And this list of assets are called the situs assets, SITUS, if you guys want to Google it. And these include personal properties, your cars, your boats, shares of public stocks, for instance, or even if you have shares in private corporations, that can also be taxed. Any US retirement plans that you may have. So we go through this whole list, and the good news is that in Canada, when you're taxed upon your death, it's 54%. Yeah, in Ontario specifically, it's 54%. You got your probate tax, your federal tax, and your provincial tax. But in the US, like I said earlier, taxes are lower. So the estate tax, depending on your classification of assets, is anywhere from 18 to 40%. So worst case scenario, you save 14% on your estate taxes. And one more thing I should mention is that if you are deemed a resident of the US, you are then taxed on your worldwide estate and not just your US estate, which is a very important fact to know. So as you can see, there's many aspects to juggle when you move from one country to the next. It's not just buying a house, starting your business, and living happily ever after, but there's many different aspects to consider. Like you might have a primary residence in Canada, for instance, and we'll get into that in your departure tax. Actually, let's just move on to departure tax now. So in your departure tax, what that basically is that when you are a resident of Canada and you move to a different country, US in this example, and you now deem yourself as a non-resident of Canada for tax purposes. Now, we're not talking about giving it for citizenship or any of that stuff. No, this is for tax purposes only. So you're, as per the CRA, you're now a non-resident of Canada. How the government views this situation is that you have now sold your assets. Even though you might own them, you might still have possession of these assets, but they will deem it as if you have let go of these assets. And the reason why they do this is because they want to collect what we call capital gains. So if you have investment properties, or if you have non-registered investments, or if you have very expensive collectibles or hockey cards, like the Wayne Gretzky rookie hockey card, I believe goes for $90,000. So if you have things of that nature, then you will have to be, then you will succumb to departure taxes. However, there's an exception to every rule in tax, and we're not any different. So there is a form called T1244, which allows you to defer these taxes. And when you defer these taxes, you're saying, Mr. and Mrs. CRA, we are leaving Canada. Yes. We have assets in Canada. Yes. But at some point, we might come back. And then based off of that premise, whether or not you come back is up to you. But based off of that premise, you can defer those capital taxes. So once again, I'm just adding layer upon layer upon layer. But as Yanique rightfully said, when you have the right team behind you, then all these intricacies become not your headache, but our headache. So all you have to do, as Yanique said, is pack your bags, invest in your business, and start doing what you do best and leave the rest to us. So based off of that, I will now pass it to Mr. McMillan.
Thank you very much, Manu and Yanique. You guys, it's always good to sit at the table with such esteemed and competent professionals. My name is Ray McMillan. I am a retired mortgage broker and real estate investor. I've been in that space since 1994, and I run a mortgage brokerage company in Mississauga, Ontario since 1999. My son who's on the call, Stefan, he currently runs the office in Mississauga, while I branched out into other markets, both in the Caribbean and in the US. For the purpose of today's call, we will speak mostly of life in America. So I started coming to Florida back in 2018 and started investing in real estate here significantly during COVID. So while most people were scared to get in an aircraft, I was flying back and forth to Florida, trying to keep my Canadian residency and maintain my 183-day rule while I was exploring opportunities here. Why the US? Population. That simple. I mean, investing or running the business is much more successful where there are more people, because that's who will be using your product or service. To put it very simply, Canada's population is 1/10 of America's population. There are very few large cities. To run some statistics, you've got 5 cities in Canada with more than 500,000 people, 34 in the US. In when it comes to more than 250,000 people, you've got about 80 cities in America with more than 250,000 people, and just 18 in Canada. Florida alone has 6 cities with more than 250,000 people. California has 14 or 15. Texas, Arizona. So all the states that are warmer, which is where I tend to focus, have larger populations. Next is median house price. The big competition today is affordability. And I think to understand affordability, you have to understand what median house price means. I'm not a math wizard. What I can tell you, median means that half the properties are worth more and half are worth less than that median number. So when you watch the news, be very careful how you digest that information, because it scares you, but it shouldn't necessarily scare you. Your median house price in Ontario is 800,000 Canadian dollars, which is about 680,000 US. Anybody who has a calculator, do the calculation. 1 Canadian dollar is about 69 US cents to the conversion. Your median house price in Florida is $400,000. Now, if you are moving into the US to buy real estate, you've got to determine quite a few things. Where you plan to buy your real estate, what you plan to buy, why you plan to buy it, and when you plan to buy it. And the when can be any time in the future. But the what, where, and why is very important, because each real estate market is very different. And that goes from state to city to zip code to neighborhood. And if you don't understand that concept properly, you'll probably find yourselves in a bit of a problem. If you're from Toronto, much of Toronto is very homogeneous. You got neighborhoods. Peel is very similar. Peel and Durham are very similar neighborhoods. And once you leave the 416 and get into the suburbs, it's all pretty much the same. Lots of houses, few small plazas. Most American cities are very different. First of all, they're older cities. In Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm located, this is the oldest part of America. This is called the First Coast. First settled in the late 1500s by the Spanish explorers. So you've got cities here that were first developed and metamorphosized 200 years ago. You have neighborhoods in Jacksonville, Florida, that are 100 years old. You have properties here in Florida that are 100 years old. If you go into parts of Florida or Tampa, Orlando, you find different types of neighborhoods. You go into St. Petersburg, you'll find condominiums and high-density housing. So the what you buy is very, by the what, I mean, are you buying a condominium? Are you buying a townhouse? Are you buying a home on a large estate? Are you buying a home on a small property footprint? And that will determine where you buy that, right? The other what you want, then look at the why. Why are you buying the property? Are you buying it for your personal use, or are you buying it as an investment property? And the two things aren't the same, because if you buy it for your personal use and then shift it into the rental pool, your neighborhood might be different to where you want to live in the future, right? So it's very important to understand why. And even if you're in Toronto, you will know if you go to certain neighborhoods, if you're living in, let's say, Toronto, and you're living off of Shepherd Avenue, you have a lot of homes in that area. And if you move to one of the main intersections, whether it's Shepherd and Keele or Shepherd and Jane, the demographic changes significantly. So it's important to work with somebody who's actually on the ground in the area, who understands the nuances of that neighborhood to better guide you based on what you're trying to accomplish. Because you don't want to make a mistake on a $300,000 or $400,000 investment, because the exit might not be as easy. And if it is easy, it may come to significant loss because you're now forced to sell the property. Okay. Now, I'm going to approach it a little differently than Yanique and Manu, because I'm talking real estate. I think most people, it's a sexy subject. If you got any questions while I'm talking, you need to clarify anything, just throw it in the chat, and I'll have Manu or Yanique pull the question up, and I can answer it right on the spot. So we get a little more interaction from the audience. I love audience interaction. Okay. So we've got the what. The other thing is ownership. In Florida, most homes are either in a condominium or an HOA. not something that's very common in Ontario. Yes, there are condos which are mostly high-rise condos, but in Florida, you've got homes, regular single-family homes or townhomes that are in a condominium. Why is this important? This is important because those ownership types restrict the use of the property. So if you're buying a property to put into a rental pool, you have to be very certain that where you're buying it, the ownership structure allows you to do that. And I'll give you a situation. We were looking at a property to rent during COVID, and I went to a few places. And when I went, I visited one of the properties. The condo corp was having a meeting, and the agent who was there, who was showing the property, said, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. That way, I can show you, I can introduce you, sorry, to the condo corp." And I learned that not only did the condo corp had to approve me as an investor buying the property, they also had to approve the potential tenant who is moving into the property. So there's 2 layers of approval based on the ownership type. Now in Ontario, that's not common. You buy your property and you put your tenant in there, and nobody tells you what to do. So it is very important to understand the properties you're purchasing and what the limitations are on the use. The next thing is your location. Where do you want to be, right? Let's get back to Florida. You've got coastal cities and you've got inland cities. Orlando is an inland city. Tampa is a coastal city. St. Pete's is a coastal city. Jacksonville is a coastal city. So if being close to the beach is important to you and you love being close to the water, then Orlando is not a place for you, because that's an hour-and-a-half drive to the nearest beach. Where we are in Jacksonville, you've got 22 miles of beach, so it's very Caribbean-like with the American experience. The weather, so some parts of the state are more hurricane-prone than other parts, and we can't ignore that. I mean, Florida is very flat, highest elevation is probably a few hundred feet. Part of the state has flooded, so you have to be very conscious when you look at property here to check and see what the flood issues are. So any property you look at, there'll be a flood report, and it'll be rated on a scale of 1 to 10. So if your if is on the scale of 5 or higher, or 4 or higher, then it might not be the place for you, because when the weather changes during hurricane season, there's a potential to flooding. That would impact your property insurance. Right? So those are the things you want to consider when looking at moving into the southern part of the U.S. Also, you want to consider, are you going to buy and self-manage? Are you going to buy and put into a pool management company where they manage everything for you? They will charge you a certain amount of fees to do that. Do you want partial use in a rental pool and partial use for yourself? So we have to determine what we're doing with this property when we buy it. There are also tax implications, and I think Manu spoke to that. If you're coming across the border, whether as a partial resident or a permanent resident, then any income you earn in investment property here in the US and in Canada, you've got to consult with an accountant to make sure it's taken care of properly. Are there any questions so far from the audience? I know I've said a lot of things so far. Is there anybody who's got a specific question they want me to answer that we can expand on?
For any one of us, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any questions coming through in the chat, so maybe we could just...
Yeah. So I always tell my clients, when looking at a particular part of the US to buy real estate, find a realtor who understands that market. One of the mistakes many investors make on both sides of the border is that they choose somebody who they're close to, or a family friend who might not understand the subtleties of that market. And if you're in a market that you're not familiar with, and you have the wrong realtor who doesn't work with foreign buyers, who doesn't understand how the deal needs to be structured, it's not what you're trying to achieve, again, you can find yourself in a bit of a quandary with the wrong piece of real estate. So I would certainly recommend finding the right realtor. In today's environment, a lot of information is found online. There are a lot of resources you can go to and look at property. If you're looking at a high-rise condo or a low-rise condo, you put in your parameters, you put in your budget, you look at the median property prices. If you rent in those properties, you want to look and see what the median rents are. I use a very simple formula when it comes to determine whether a property is profitable or not. And I look at it this way: if the property is worth $200,000, then my rent should be at least $2,000 a month. I use the 1% rule, very basic rule. There are many other properties you have to look at when you're analyzing rental real estate, but at least that gives you an idea whether you can actually rent this property based on current interest rates, and it will actually pay for itself and provide some sort of cash flow. Because you want to be aware that at some time there may be vacancies, there may be repairs that need to be done, and if your numbers are tight and there's no slush fund to take care of those eventualities, how do you manage to build your portfolio properly? Okay, and then your lawyers. You want to have lawyers here who understand what is it you're doing, who are able to work with cross-border residents, who will advise you whether it's necessary to put the property into a LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, or you should have it in your own name. For the first property here, it should be pretty simple. If you're buying as a Canadian without US status, then your down payment would be between 20 and 25%. You can finance your property through a Canadian bank or a US lender. You've got the Royal Bank of Canada and TD Canada Trust, which are both very active in Florida. There's a TD Canada Trust not too far from me. RBC has their reps who work with US Canadian buyers who buy in the US. If you want out finance in the US, then there's a series of lenders you can use in the US. You can choose, whether it's institutional lenders, credit unions, or private lenders. Here they're called hard money lenders. Your US credit report can be pulled in. They will take your US assets and liabilities. You can use your US credit report. Your plain credit report here in the US. If you are dealing with an RBC or a TD bank, because of their cross-border relationships, it's very easy for them to do that for you. So it's not a very complicated process to get the financing. Your first rental property or your first two rental properties will be financed based on the strength of the applicant. So the same way you buy a property in Ontario, they will check your credit report, they will check your income, assets, liabilities, down payment. When you get into your second and third and fourth properties, and you've got a bit more than a year of experience, then the lending model changes. They go to what is called a DSCR model, which is a debt service coverage ratio. So your personal income and credit is no longer as important as the income from the tenants in the property. Now, having done mortgages for 25 years in Canada, I can tell you with utmost certainty that it's a lot easier to borrow money for real estate in the US, in Florida, than it ever was or ever will be in Canada. I did my last mortgage in Canada in 2018, and I tell my son every day, I say, I don't know how you do it. I would not want to be a mortgage broker in Canada today, particularly if you work with investors, because the process is very arduous. It's paper-based. It just is a lot for people trying to build that portfolio. While here in Florida, the process is a lot easier. Got a question, Manu?
Yes, sir. I got a question. So it just kind of popped in my head right now. In Canada, in the large cities, when you buy an investment property, most investors have a negative cash flow. It's just the way it is in Canada. I think we've all accepted this. In the US, is that the same case, or is there a positive flow?
No, it's not. And that's what, and I was going to get to that point, so thanks for bringing it up. That's one of the advantages of shifting your portfolio to the US. First of all, with a median price of $800,000, right? You get your entry level to buy real estate to invest with in Canada is between $200,000 to $300,000, right? The probability of positively cash flowing in the GTA doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't existed probably in the last 15 years. In the US, you're buying rental properties in many of our larger cities at probably 200,000, right, for a single family home. Townhouse condo for 175, some condos as low as $125,000. Rents in the US are based on size of the home, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms. So you can have an 800 square foot home with 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and rent it probably $1,300 a month that you bought for probably 100 grand, right? So I don't think there's any investor in America who would buy a property that doesn't cash flow. What has happened in Canada is that we were sold the appreciation model because properties changed in value so fast in Canada that everybody bought their real estate with the intention was, if I buy a pre-construction condo for $300,000, by the time I take possession, it's worth $500,000. And that was the model that most investors used in Canada, in the GTA. And I've seen it being in the industry for more than 25 years. That's not a US model. There's not a lot. Toronto has the most cranes in the sky of any city in North America. It's not the same model. People buy real estate here for two reasons. One is fix and flip, right? You find something that's off market or on market, needs a bit of work. You know what the current value is. You know which one you got to put into it. You know what the ARV value, which is the after repair value. You buy it for $120,000, put in 50 grand. Your after repair value is $250,000. You put it back in the market, you sell it, you make your money. Whoever knows the math, you know the net proceeds is going to be. Or you buy it to cash flow, right? You buy and hold. Gentrification is a huge thing in American cities. So many investors, including myself, we follow the gentrification road, gentrification trail. So for me here in Jacksonville, I've basically observed how the large investors were working, where they were going. I watched their signs and I followed them. So I'm a buy and hold investor. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to pay top dollar for my real estate. I'm still going to try and buy it at a discount. Information here is easily accessible. So if Manu has his property listed for sale, and it's a duplex just off of downtown in Jacksonville, and he's asking $220,000 for it, property is 60 years old, and he says to me the property is fully renovated, I can actually go to the City Hall's website and pull all the building permits and see exactly what was done to the property before I even call you. And then if I see the roof is 10 years old, because I'm in hurricane territory and I've got to get a mitigation report, when I call you and you tell me you want $250 for your duplex, I will tell you that I got to replace that roof in 3 years because I can't get insurance for that property, and it's going to cost me $20,000. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to back the $20,000, or you're going to split the $20,000 between the two of us, right? So the access to information as a potential investor gives you much more leverage than you can ever have in buying property in Canada. And that's what I love about buying real estate here in the US. I can tell you where the electrical was done, where the plumbing was done, because everything you do in a property here in Florida, you have to get a permit to do it. You can't just call a guy to change your wiring or call a guy to put a pool in your backyard. You've got to get a building permit, and the information is all public knowledge. So it's easy for us to analyze real estate here, much easier than it is in Canada, and to make smarter decisions when it comes to buying that property.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Ray. I was super glued to the screen. I don't know about anyone else. Manu, I can see like the numbers reeling in your head. I know you're a
The wheels
numbers
are
guy.
turning. I might go buy a property now.
I know, right? Listen, guys, this is why we create these webinars, these sessions, not just to educate you, but to inform you and equip you with the knowledge that you need to take and implement. Because knowledge without application and implementation is nothing. Remember now, we spoke about the importance of having the right team working on your behalf. And as Ray said, you're going to be needing legal support. You're going to be needing a real estate lawyer, immigration lawyer on your side. You're going to be needing your CPA, and not just any CPA that has knowledge and experience working across both borders. You're also going to be needing someone who is knowledgeable about the real estate markets if you're investing in real estate. And as you all saw this afternoon, Ray is your guy. What we have curated here is a wonderful opportunity for you to either stay in Canada and invest in the US, or start moving to the US on the E2 visa to reside there as a business investor. Today, we spoke all about real estate, but you can also leverage these opportunities through business purchases. Okay. And we also have a business broker on our team, and our next session will be all about the types of businesses that you should be exploring, the types of businesses that will give you the greatest return and in the shortest possible time, and the types of businesses that will pretty much move beyond everything that we're worrying about in the technology space. What we're going to do now is open the floor to take any questions that you may have. If you want to, understand more about anything that we've touched on this afternoon, now is your time to drop some questions in the chat. If you want to connect with any member on our team, remember, we're all about using your passport as a vehicle to create and preserve wealth. In other seminars, we're going to be talking about leveraging insurance policies and estate planning to secure the wealth that we're encouraging you to create. So stay tuned for our announcements for future sessions. But I'm telling you guys, this is a movement and you want to be a part of this movement, because I know you came to this session this afternoon because you have a goal to be successful. You have a goal to gain financial freedom, and you have a goal to create wealth. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We're happy to answer.
And in addition, Ray, myself, and Yanique, we're all available on LinkedIn as well. So you have our first and last names. So please connect with us, and you can contact us there as well. And any one of us will be more than happy to help you out.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
just before, I saw there's one comment in the chat, Yanni. But before we go any further, if you don't want to come to Florida, that's okay. You can analyze cities that are much closer to you. And I have done a lot of real estate in Rochester. I know the Maryland market very well, the Baltimore market, the Michigan market, Detroit. So if you think that, okay, Florida is too far, the cost of flying down here to stay in a hotel while I look at my portfolio, you can drive across the border and go into cities in Michigan or upstate New York. And just, there are certain tools you can use. One of them is Zillow. You go to Zillow.com. You put in what your price point is, what you want to look for. If anybody finds a property that interests them, just send me the link. Tell me what you're trying to do. We have a conversation, and then I can analyze that property and tell you whether it makes sense or not. It might be a fixer-upper. If you're in the Detroit market, the prices will scare you. You can buy an old mansion for like $40,000. It's probably a 4,000 square foot property that may have a historic designation. It may need about $100,000 of renovations, but that property after renovation is probably worth $500,000 or more. And as I said earlier, there are certain historic Black neighborhoods that are being gentrified. With the opportunity to get into those neighborhoods now, as opposed to 5 years from now, is an opportunity that anybody can take advantage of. If you are a seasoned Torontonian, You'll know that there are many parts of Toronto that were gentrified. One of them is Parkdale, which is now called King West. My son's on the call. He never heard about Parkdale. He just knew King West, but Parkdale was an area that was mostly rooming houses, drug addicts, and that sort of stuff. Today, King West is one of the most affluent parts of downtown Toronto, with many high-end lofts, restaurants, and that sort of stuff. So understanding what's happening in a city is very important, and a neighborhood, when it comes to taking advantage and scaling up on the money train to real estate.
So we have a question here from
Awesome.
Karine. That's great.
Yeah.
Maybe Yanique, you and I can set up a call with Karine. Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing here Karine would love to have her husband listen to the recording. Absolutely. It is recorded. Karine, as Manu has said, we're inviting you to connect with us. We should have your email address, so we're going to be sending you an introductory email so we can schedule a meeting to talk. Listen, everyone, there's going to be quite a wealth transfer in the next 5 to 7 years where we're seeing all the baby boomers who owned businesses, they're going to be either moving that money down to millennials and Gen X, or they're going to have to sell it because their descendants simply don't want to operate these businesses. That is your opportunity to go in, make an offer. And there are several ways to structure business transactions. The business broker will share more about some of those strategies when she comes to share. But what we're saying here is you do not want to be left behind. Planning for 5 and 7 years has to commence now. That is what we do here at Borderless. That is the opportunity that we have curated for you, and we are welcoming you to start that conversation with us. It's been a pleasure sharing with you all this afternoon. Again, my name is Yanique Russell, and I'm a lawyer. Manu is your CPA, and Ray is your real estate investor and retired mortgage broker. We do have time for one more question, if there are any.
I think we were so thorough that they have no questions. We answered everything.
It's clear as crystal.
Here's Crystal.
Awesome.
All
I'm
right.
happy to hear that. Well, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure. Do enjoy the rest of your afternoons. We're going to be, thank you so much, Yan. Yan said it was an amazing session. Stefan said it was very insightful. It's our pleasure to share, and we are honored to have you stop by with us. Take care. We're going to be reaching out to you, right? Informing you of how to connect with us. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.